evening. We'll go ahead and call the Osceola County School Board meeting for Tuesday, December 15th, 2020 to order. Would you please silence your cell phones and begin each meeting with an invocation, which tonight will be led by Pastor Greg Squires for Freedom Life Church. Greg, are you? Okay, perfect. And then followed by our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Mike Allen. National anthem will be a video from Tyler Snell, senior band major at Osceola County School for the Arts on the tenor saxophone. Our mission statement by Dr. Joseph Evans, assistant superintendent for high school curriculum, and translation services by Dr. Belinda Reyes. Is she here? There she is, hiding. Okay. If you would, please rise and Dr. Squires, if you come to this podium over here.
Let's pray. Father, thank you so much that we can come before you in the mighty name of Jesus, and we can pray at the school board meeting. Thank you, Father, that you're here with us. Thank you that you've not forsaken us, you've not left us. Thank you that you are the creator of every living being. We are grateful that this night, this evening, that, Lord, you give wisdom and you give direction, you give understanding. So I pray along with Jesus that our Father which is in heaven, may your kingdom come today, and may your will be done in our school district as it is in heaven. Give every teacher, every principal, every person that works in the school system wisdom and guidance and grace. Give all those that serve on the school board the same thing. Father, protect our students, help them, and bless them. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can be seated.
Good evening. The mission statement of the School District of Osceola County is inspiring all learners to reach their highest potential as responsible, productive citizens.
Good afternoon. Thank you for choosing the School District of Osceola County. My name is Belinda Reyes and I'm here to provide translation services. Muy buenas tardes, gracias por elegir el Distrito Escolar de Osceola. Mi nombre es Belinda Reyes y estoy aquí para proveer servicio de traducción.
Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Next, come our comment portion. Steve, would you like to say?
Yes, thank you. I have tons of comments. I'd like to invite all of our community members to visit the PTA page for our Celebration K-8 on the 17th because they're going to be having a virtual talent show, and I would love for these kiddos to get a chance to showcase their talent. So It's a really innovative way to continue, giving kids support in this crazy time that we live in. So kudos to the PTA for Celebration K-8. I don't want to steal your thunder about OHS, but
Go ahead. Your district is-
OHS is going to, what are they, the state? Oh my God, that's amazing. I mean, that should drop the mic, of course. We're very excited for them. We're super proud of our students, and I know that we're all behind them when they go play, so I will end it there.
Speaking of talent, our adults have talent. I went to the multicultural day on Friday afternoon and I was listening to music and I was thinking, man, we hired a band to play. And I looked at it, it goes, that's our programmer, that's our ESOL person. So like every person in the band was our employees. And so the food was amazing. It was a great event. Thank you so much. I did tour New Beginnings today also because we got to see the good and the bad of the district. And I tell you what, Miss Nina runs an awesome ship out there. Again, it is what it is. But New Beginnings is something that, all children shouldn't be left behind, technically speaking. And I hate to use a cliche from something else, but the reality is that even the ones that aren't the best students still need our attention and love, and I appreciate the fact that the district is doing that.
I appreciate that, Julie, because I was one of those students. I'll be traveling throughout the district over the next couple of weeks, and I look forward to meeting all of our principals and everyone out there. So if you guys see me out there, please don't hesitate to come out and chat. Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
I had the opportunity through the efforts of Mr. Osceola, he pulled together a meeting with some special people at special teachers at St. Cloud Middle, and I'm not going to dwell on it, but we'll talk more about that later. But never met a better group of unselfish, selfless teachers who just want to help one of their own, and I was very touched. And I just want to thank you and thank you for allowing me to be part of that meeting.
That's your birthday.
Library books. We have an issue with library books. I've been told. Back in March, I've talked with a couple of the media specialists in two of the schools, and they were down pretty significant returns. The kids were pushed out in March and encouraged to spend money to check out books, which they did, but they've not been bringing them back. So we're in quite a deficit on returns on our library books, and I don't know how our computers are. Before I go too further, again, Osceola Cowboys, they pledged their ticket to the state, and I've been watching on social media that what the team is doing right now. So they're going to be playing for state championship in Tallahassee. They're looking for funds to help offset some of their costs, some of their expenses. So I'm personally bringing you a check tomorrow, Sarah. So make sure that it gets put in their internal account, if you wouldn't mind. And I will say, as a St. Cloud High School graduate, turning loose of that check is going to be like, you remember when Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost had to turn loose of the check to the orphanage?
It'll be good for your soul.
I don't know. No, I wish them all.
Representing all of us.
Yes, I wish them all the best luck, but I'll get with you later this year. That's it. Thank you.
Robert, did you return your copy of the Constitution that you checked out? The original?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Just a couple of things. I've had the opportunity to be out in schools and witnessing some of the great holiday celebrations across our district and our community, and want to wish everyone a very safe and happy holiday here in just a few days. But today I was at OXA, and their string quintet came out into the office area. They were waiting when I walked out of my meeting with Mr. Neal, the principal, to perform for us. And so I got to hear Jingle Bell Rock with the strings quintet. It was really, really, really awesome. So I think they are missing some of their performance opportunities. They did a fantastic Christmas tribute and show last Saturday, I believe it was, and it's going to go live on their YouTube channel on Friday night at 6 o'clock. So anybody in the community who's looking for a boost, the OXA kids are incredibly talented, and it's an opportunity for them to showcase their talents in a way that with COVID, we've been very, very limited in what we could do. And I will again echo the comments of the board to say go Cowboys. I will just share with the board and our community, because some of you may have forgotten and others are new to the board. Several years ago when we started the concept of marketing and branding our website and branding some of our other spaces and spots around the district, the board committed to sharing some of those dollars for student groups who made it to state or national level competitions.
both athletic and academic and artistic. For example, when our Access students made it to Ellington. The district doesn't provide the whole kit and caboodle. You know, the kids and the coaches need to have some input in that, but they will also be getting $2,000 from your marketing funds to help go towards the cost of the trip, particularly because, you know, we're making them take extra buses because of COVID. So that's just one way to say that the district is also coming behind to support and recognize their tremendous effort.
And lastly, just want to wish everybody Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. I know everybody is ready for a break. As I kind of look back on this year, a couple weeks ago, thinking about all the stuff that's been going on with COVID, kind of started thinking some of the good things, and we've been able to spend more family time sitting around talking and playing games than we have in years. So there are some things that have been kind of nice around our house this year that will hopefully over the holidays will be nice, and hopefully many of you will be able to experience some of that in your time, in your downtime, which we know you sorely need in this. So I thank everybody for the first semester, students, teachers, staff, everybody. It's been a long haul, but we're getting there. So with that, brings us to, we don't have any appointments or transfers. We're
Yes,
gonna
we
have a
do.
back to school.
No, we do have an appointment, yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. No.
I apologize for that. If I could invite Mr. Reed to the podium, please. Members of the board and members of the community, I am so proud tonight to recognize and introduce Mr. Stephen Reed. Mr. Reed has been a teacher at Hickory Tree Elementary School in the field of music, a dean of students at Neptune Middle since 2018. He received his bachelor's degree from Illinois State University and a master's degree in educational leadership from University of Central Florida. And I am proud to recommend him to become an assistant principal at Parkway Middle School, where he will support Mrs. Gould and implementation of our MYPIB program. His talents and strengths, I believe, make him very well perfect for the job.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Melendez, second by Ms. Castillo. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries 5-0. Congratulations and good luck.
Yeah, board members, administration, family, friends, and everybody, I can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity to be here to help lead the greatest students and faculty in our entire state, entire country. So I just gotta say thank you to my wife Helen for huge support for me, and my parents Jim and Nancy for even back when I was in Boy Scouts being one of those troop guys saying, hey, this education thing might work out for you. So and going from some of the greatest administrators, mentors I could possibly work with, Mr. Noble, Mrs. Doe, Dr. Vislaki, now with Mr. Rademacher at Neptune, Mr. Remy and Mr. Sasick, and now being able to work with Mrs. Gould. So I'm extremely blessed, extremely excited. Thank you, Dr. Pace, or Mr. Allen, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
And Stephen comes from a family of educators. His wife is a media specialist at Narcoossee Elementary, and his mom and dad are also teachers in our district, and we're welcoming all of you.
All right, thank you for all being here tonight. All right.
And now we have a back to school update.
All right.
I do not have a PowerPoint. Mr. Thacker said thank you. For everybody else. This won't take long tonight, but I did want to provide some updates to the board and also to our community. As you know, we did an open enrollment opportunity for parents to request changes for second semester. Out of that, it's always interesting because you get multiple responses and those types of things, but Mr. Thorne and his team did a great job of sorting that out for our school administrative teams. We have a net gain right now of 3,033 students coming back face to face. I know that there have been a lot of people really concerned about social distancing in our classrooms. It does get more challenging as we bring more people back to school, but we do have students who are being successful as digital learners who want to continue to do that. We do anticipate that there will be some more changes. There are always those who, for whatever reason, miss the enrollment window or perhaps are struggling as digital learners, and our schools are following up and making sure that we've had those connections and that parents understand where we are. So it'll probably be Friday before I have final numbers to report to you all in the community, but we are bringing some of our students back, but also working on how we support our students who are going to continue in the digital world. I shared with you last Friday that we did submit our assurances plan to the state. I provided a copy of that. It's quite detailed. I'll shoot you just a one pager for your review and to hold on to this weekend. Mr. Flowers and the team did a great job of putting that together. But I do want to remind everybody, as Ms. Graber has done an analysis of our financial situation, were we not to provide that 5-day-a-week face-to-face option for parents and students moving into second semester, were we not to provide an assurances plan that complies with the requirements in the emergency order, our district would be facing a cut of $18.7 million in January. So that's a really significant chunk. So we're very fortunate to have the provisions of the emergency order. You know, obviously there are some expectations that go along with that, but we're pleased that we're able to provide choice to our parents, but also do the things to make sure that kids have the opportunity to be successful. We have seen locally an uptake in cases over the course of the last month. And this week in particular, you know, we're seeing as of last week that Thanksgiving surge. There were 1,470 new cases last week in Osceola County. And we had, as a total, my right page, 82 positive students and 13 positive staff members over the course of last week. Quarantining quite a few students and staff members. Remember that our staff members who are quarantined, if they feel up to it, are able to continue teaching from home and not have to use any of their leave. Students, we've gotten really pretty smooth at transitioning them into digital learning. It's certainly not ideal, but we do hope that this will kind of start to slow down over the Christmas holidays. We just have to remind everybody that we can't let COVID fatigue let us bring down our guard. We've got to remember how important the social distancing is where we can do it, and how important the face coverings are when it's limited and we can't do that. Did also want to share some good news. As you know, we've talked a little bit about the impact on the social emotional state of our young people, particularly those who are digital learners, and how stressful this has been. We've had some real challenges, particularly at the middle school level. So instead of just moaning about that, our student services team, along with Mr. Allen and the middle school administrative team, came together to do a Be the One campaign, Be the One. And it really was about going out and visiting schools, every single classroom, both digital and face-to-face. Had an opportunity to hear from members of our student services team how important it is if you are feeling sad or you know of somebody feeling sad, these are the places where you can go for get resources. So over the course of just 5 weeks, they visited 16 schools, touched 13,200 students, and we really believe that this is a wonderful way for us to really start to make a difference and kind of help to turn that around. After the break, they'll be going out to our high schools and elementary schools as well, you know, kind of dividing and conquering. The message changes a little bit depending on the age group, but still so important that we remind people, don't feel sad alone, and don't let a friend feel sad alone. Instead, help us help you get your way to the resources. Our pool testing has continued, as the direction from the board has been that you wanted to continue that. As of today, we have 6,010 students and staff members who've been voluntary pool tested over the course of since September. And of that, we had 6 positives in round 1 and 10 positives in round 2. So we're continuing to see that the asymptomatic existence in our schools is not what we were afraid it would be. Although we are again continuing to see a little bit of an uptick that we want to try to kind of get under control. Finally, I do need to seek some direction from the board. I don't need action, but some consensus about how we move forward with COVID leave. The federal COVID leave that was approved in March, which granted individuals up to 10 days of paid COVID leave for quarantine periods, either due to sickness for themselves or sickness for someone's family, expires on December the 31st. There is a cost. Remember, this is out of the district operational budget. There were no additional federal dollars that came down from Washington, other than the CARES Act dollars that we've received. But I would recommend to the board that we consider continuing to offer that 10 days of COVID leave after the first of the year to individuals who have to quarantine in our district, as long as we can continue to do that. And Sarah has assured me that she believes, with the assurances of the fiscal stability that goes along with the CARES Act, that we can make that work.
No.
Just consensus.
Consensus.
And not
So was
something,
it paid for before, through the CARES grant before, was it a portion that's part of it?
it could have been, that was not something that this board, the prior board dedicated CARES Act dollars to. I'll be happy to go over what those dollars are going toward in the budget, but there were no additional dollars other than our original allocation from the state for these purposes.
I'm generally in favor of doing that. The only thing is you can report on, so you can tell us what we have spent on that in the first semester.
What about 1.8 million that we spent on?
And that's what's projected for the second half?
I would hope that as the vaccination starts to roll out, that this would start to slow down the trend. And remember, people are only eligible to use that one time. So if they have to quarantine more than once, it goes back to their own sick leave.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I think you have a consensus on that.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all I had, unless there are other questions.
Nope, gonna bring us to the agenda, and just a couple comments about the agenda. At one of the last board meeting, the meeting before, we've had some discussion about moving public comments towards the back of the agendas, because some of the things that people want to comment about are actually discussed in the agenda, so we have done that. In the haste to kind of get that done, I talked to some other places, and particularly the county, and what the problem with everything being at the end of the agenda, if somebody has come here to speak on an item in the agenda, it's a little late. So with your indulgence today, if somebody's got something on the agenda they want to address, we'll do it as we get to them, for one. But then what the county does, is I'd like to take a look at that. They have a spot before, at this time in the meeting, if you're going to address an item on the agenda. If you want a general comment, it goes to the back. So, yeah, we'll go ahead, if that's okay with everybody.
Yes.
Has anybody filled out a comment card?
Uh,
Out of curiosity.
I've got a couple comments on it. I have two changes on the consent, or on the agenda as well. One, I need to pull item 10.01 off of the consent. I will declare a conflict when we get to that piece, so we'll not vote on that item. The last piece, item number 20, which is the student representative comment. If he gets here, we've got to kind of, after our executive session, I'd like to move it up on the last thing before we convene to the executive session, just to get it in. And those are my two changes. Anybody have any other changes to the?
Modification, correct?
Yep.
I would like, given, after reviewing of the agenda coupled with our facilities workshop, the information I'm getting from that, I would like to put something on the agenda with regard to a parcel of land, along Noble Road, sufficient enough to build a transportation facility in potential school sites. I just would like to put that on for discussion.
Is that kind of new business then?
Well, it's unfinished old, I think
I don't know if it's unfinished or if it's new.
I could bring it up under your board comments. It's not on the agenda, so it's not scheduled, so I'd do it there or new business, either one.
So
We're just talking
you
consent.
can talk about it when we have.
We're just talking consent, not reg.
Anything on the agenda?
Oh, yeah,
that you-
so, yeah, 14.01 and 14.02. Yeah, pulling them,
What do you wanna do?
Yeah.
No, they're on regular agenda, they're not on.
Okay, yeah, that's all I was asking. Okay. Right, so we're not, it's just consent.
Any other, guys?
I also need to get some consensus and direction from the board about our Pine Tree Road property. Our realtors are here and I have some options for you to talk about. And then I believe, Mr. Thacker, we need to talk about the January 12th meeting. We have an impact fee workshop scheduled for that day and I believe you're gonna be out of town. So you're gonna talk to the board about perhaps trying to add a special meeting.
I was gonna do that in my comments at the end of the meeting.
And I will need to request an executive session at January 12th board meeting if we have it or if we move it another day for the purposes of discussing bargaining topics and issues.
All right, we made that a little complicated.
Sorry.
Would anybody like to crack at a motion on that? To move forward here.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the modifications brought forth. We're pulling
10.01,
10.01, and I think that was it. Everybody else is.
and just changing the order of the
And
student
changing the
representative
order
comments.
to
Yep.
allow for the student to speak before the executive order?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you're moving 10.01 to the regular,
Yeah, moving it to regular.
right, not pulling.
Pulling it off consent, going
Right.
on. I have a motion by Ms. Castillo,
Second.
a second by Mr. Bass. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, that brings us then to informational items. Sarah, are you doing anything on the,
I will do 12.02. Is there anything on 12.01 or is that just for your information?
that's our, for our information?
Would be the wrong PowerPoint.
Welcome.
Yes.
I just had a, I guess, question on 12.1. I think the fonts are like this big. Bear with me, I'm gonna change it. On the rule change. Okay, the first one in pink, 5.352. This is just a strange comment. On the comments, it says to acknowledge court ordered status of both parents as emergency contacts. Is parents and caregivers, is that the synonymous? Because we have so many kids that are not, they have, it is synonymous with brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and whoever's the caregivers. Okay. It says parents, so I didn't know if that was just okay, I said it was a simple question.
Sarah, are you?
I think we're just waiting for Vernon to get the PowerPoint up. Coming up now too. So just wanted to try and provide a little clarity tonight on the emergency order that was issued related to the second semester. So the one that was issued last summer related to first semester that allowed for us to offer our digital option, which we comply with in order to be able to keep our funding held harmless. So there was some confusion about what that would actually mean. We do have confirmation now at this point that for the first half of the year, everyone, all school districts and all charter schools will be paid at their original projection, which is how we're typically paid up until the October survey count. So the previous emergency order hold harmless provision will stand that everybody will be paid for the entire first semester at their FTE projection. Looks like we got it up here. So and jump to the first slide. I wanted to talk about our FTE growth over the last several years because as you guys know, our funding is directly generated from our students and from our FTE numbers. So this slide shows the last 7 years or so. The big orange part at the bottom is our traditional student enrollment. And then above that, the blue section, you have our charters. So you can see how the charter growth has transpired. McKay has also grown slightly. And then in the last 2 years, we've added the family empowerment scholarships. Last year, we started with 575 students executing those scholarships, and that has grown to 1,281. So over double of year one are now using those family empowerment scholarships to attend private schools. So I wanted to point out here, if you look at the last column, 2021, you'll see that we've actually reduced from last year. As you know, we've grown every year. We were projecting growth this year, which hasn't transpired. So that's why we're talking about needing to have our funding held harmless. This next slide just shows our FTE growth by program. A few things we want to point out here. Again, the last column reflects our actual student counts as of October of the survey 2, not projected. So you can see the bottom line there that we've actually gone down in enrollment from last year. But if you look at the program number 130, our ESOL numbers, you'll see that over the last 2 years, those numbers have started trending downward again. We think some of that may be students that had come and joined our district after the aftermath of Hurricane Maria that have since left. There may also be some students testing out, but those are some interesting numbers to look at because those are higher funded program students. So we want to make sure that we're identifying all of the kids and coding all of our kids correctly to receive the appropriate funding for them. And that's even more important in the line below that, the 254 ESE support level 4s. Board members, we talked a little bit about this at our workshop last week with Jim Hamilton. You can see how significantly those 254 numbers have gone down over the last few years. So we really need to make a concerted effort to make sure that we're identifying kids and getting them coded in these programs appropriately. The last one that I wanted to point out is the last line, program 300, our career and technical programs. We've really been beefing up our career tech programs, adding additional programs, getting students enrolled in those additional opportunities for CTE certifications. And so it is a little bit concerning to see the drop in that number this year, over 200 down. Dr. Pace can chime in.
But I'm concerned that is more than likely a direct result of our digital learning this first semester, because some of those CTE programs we're just not able to offer appropriately in the digital world. But still, that is a number that's concerning because we want our kids in those programs earning industry certification. Hoping to see that go up for survey 3.
I hate to throw a monkey wrench. What if somebody's both, like ESE and ESOL at the same time? How's that categorized? And does the state stack up the monies, or do they just give us the higher category?
Yep, so first thing, it's by individual course, but that program, the higher funded one, as long as they meet the higher funded criteria, then that would.
So basically ESE.
So yeah.
So if they're ESE and ESOL, the district has to absorb the cost of teaching them the English language as well, then. That burden kind of falls on us.
To look at it that way. All right, so this slide just shows the comparison going back to last year. We had ended last year, we were at 69,378 FTE. Going into this year, our projection was to grow by close to 3%. So our projection was 71,315, and that's what all of our funding is based on right now. So that's what we are being paid off of, and that's what we will be protected to continue to be paid off of first semester based on the first emergency order. Then in October, when we did our survey 2 student counts, our numbers at that point in time, and these are still preliminary, that was 68,888. So you can see we're 2,427 students under projection, which we would normally be talking about losing that funding. Okay, so in a typical year, those October FTE counts would then translate into that funding adjustment in the third FEFP calculation that would be released in January. So what we have confirmation on now, that 2,400 student reduction would have translated into an $18.1 million loss for our district. What we've confirmed now is that we will not see this funding loss because of the hold harmless provision. So this is not an extra $18.1 million that we now automatically have at our disposal to go do something else with, but it's dollars that we otherwise would have had to look at how to cut out of our budget. additional positions that we would no longer be able to fund. So that was the importance of being able to keep this money. So as we move into the new emergency order now for second semester, the third FEFP calculation that I just discussed will continue to be based on the projected FTE for all districts, and there will be no funding change. So this is pretty unique. Normally, everybody would see their state payments change in January with the release of that FEFP calculation. There will be no change in any funding from the state flowing to any school districts in January now. So all the payments will remain the same for this as we move into spring semester. So one of the big considerations was obviously the intent was for districts that did not meet their student projections to not lose funding. But if a district or a charter school is above projection, everybody basically agrees that they should receive the funding for those additional students. The students are there and that's where the money should flow. So in order to hold everyone else harmless, but also fund the increase in student in districts that had an overall increase, that's what the second emergency order is going to do now, specific to the second semester. So we're not going backwards. First semester still is what it is. Everyone's still paid based on projection for first semester. But second semester now will include a new provision to be able to fund the growth districts, the districts that are over their initial projection. And in order to find the money statewide to do that, there will most likely be a small proration to everybody because there's no additional money. The money, the statewide money for K-12 that was authorized in the General Appropriations Act last session, that is what it is. There's no additional money to provide. So we're looking at a small proration. The DOE ran some initial projections and ours was about $466,000, but that is very preliminary based on Survey 2 data that is not finalized. So I would not take that number and run with it, but just to give you some context, kind of what we're thinking. We're not talking millions. We're talking, I'd say, probably around $500,000 max, depending on how the numbers end up falling out. There will be a little impact to us because even though as a total district we're under, some of our individual charter schools are above their projection, some more significantly than others. So we will be working through those calculations with each one of them individually to ensure that they get the extra funding for second semester if they do have more kids than were originally projected. Does all of that make sense? There's still a lot of questions looming out there. It seems like every day somebody thinks of something different that poses a question and we all have to kind of talk it through, and DOE is still trying to run some additional calculations of all these different individual scenarios that people are finding themselves in. So still a lot of questions out there, but for the most part, first semester is what it is. Everyone paid on projection. Second semester, if you're under, you're still held harmless, still paid on projection. If you're over, you will receive the benefit of being over.
Any questions? Sir? I got it, sir. Thank you. I got it for the minute.
I'm glad you do.
I got what you just told us. This is, okay, if there are no questions on that, we will move to item 13, our Chief of Staff for Teaching. The 10.01, I was going to move it under the regular facilities, so we'll get to that next. 13.01.
Make a motion to approve 13.01.
Second, with the question of like, what's the purpose of the name change? I didn't.
Wait a minute. I have a motion by Ms. Castillo with a second by Mr. Melendez. Mr. Melendez, do you have a question?
Yes, what was the purpose of the name change? Like, was it a new management company or?
There were just some amendments to the contract that were highlighted in yellow on the board agenda item.
I was just wondering, because you changed the contract, why did they have to change the name because of the contract? And I don't see the correlation between the two. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm just thinking, just because you amend the contract doesn't mean the name of the charter school has to change.
Sometimes it's not all that unusual in working with some of the charters. They sometimes change their names for whatever reason.
Okay.
It's for the man, just to sit under an umbrella of another.
See, that's what I'm saying, so it's changing,
Yeah.
Changing ownership, so it's,
Not really.
there's no financial impact, I'm not gonna beat that dead horse, but.
Any
I'll be
other,
happy to have Dr. Rafalski follow up with you.
any other questions? I have a motion by Ms. Castillo, and second by Ms. Melendez. To approve the motion, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Brings us to regular facilities, and I'd like to move 10.01 there to do it first. I pulled that off of the consent and moved it to the regular agenda because I have a conflict and will not be voting on this item. My wife represents the developer in this case. Based on the state ethics rules, I will not be voting and I will file the appropriate paperwork. So I can comment on this or ask any questions, any questions, but I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, just a question to Frank, because this is a new experience for me, you never said that. So, and I know I contacted you guys earlier, kind of like, what is the procedure and process for that?
When a board member well, there's conflicts that are clearly recognized in the law, right? And then there's board members who, for whatever reason, feel they have a conflict. You have the right, if you're in either of those, to say, I have a conflict, and here's why, whatever it is. In the legal one, you file a form identifying you announce it at the meeting, you then file a form identifying the conflict, etc. Do generally recommend if you file a conflict, unless it's extremely critical, you refrain from really engaging in a dialogue regarding the topic at the table. That goes beyond the law, but I think it protects the integrity. On this particular case, Mr. Thacker has been steadfast in declaring conflicts whenever his wife represents somebody. He's never crossed the line, he's never talked to me once, nor has, with the attorneys I work with and the staff, has she ever brought up in any way her position as the spouse of the board chair. When I first got elected and I saw it for the first time, I knew something, because I sat on the ethics commission, I routinely do, and I called and spoke with the exec just to say, okay, any new changes, anything changing this, etc. And he said, nope, still the same rule. And so legally, each one of you is in compliant when you identify a conflict and declare the conflict. My only recommendation, unless it's critical, once you declare it, I'd stay out of it. Because the perception, and I've seen that happen to board members. So, right. So that's the, we're at. So when I first got elected, I was advised that Larry Brown had opined that it wasn't a conflict. I'm kind of a stickler on that stuff, so I followed up and did research myself, and felt as long as he was complying with the law, everything was okay.
And then the second thing, just a minor thing, I think you mentioned it before, when it says the signature is required, it's the board chair.
What?
Since in this
On this
position,
one,
it's
it
the
did,
vice chair.
I spoke with Rhonda. Normally, when we have a conflict with whoever's sitting as chair, we then change the contract to go with the vice chair. And if they have a conflict, we'll either go to a board member or to the superintendent, that thing. In this one, I don't know anything other than it was.
Was the contract amended to reflect
chair will not be signing that document. And Ms. Culver, in no way is his signature to get affixed to. She would not allow his signature to be affixed when he declares a conflict. She's been around long enough to catch it, et cetera, so
Outside.
it will be
I
changed.
sign most of these, will all be hand signed by me anyway, so I would catch it when I go through the stack. Awesome.
Appreciate that. Now, the item itself, man, technically.
Sure.
Of course. Now the item itself is a delay of a delay of a delay. And I can understand and appreciate the development may not grow out as fast as it wants to grow out. But the dedication of the site, at least in my mind, should have been developed from the beginning. Like they should know, okay, generally speaking, this is where the school site is gonna go, as opposed to the rest of the development. Because, because that's at least my intention, or at least my thought process. You create a site plan, you say, hey, county, this is what I want. Now, you may not start building on it right away, because you may not have the money or the demand from the residents to buy those houses. So my concern is, what are they waiting on to say to the school district, this is where you're gonna put your school? So that's my concern about delaying this, because it says no less than 20 net usable acres, but is that gonna be the leftover stuff that has, I don't know, because we have to also consider, access roads, things of that nature. And so I'm just somewhat concerned that when I see this, we don't have like a set area on there.
I think if you look at the bottom of the contract, all the way at the bottom, I believe there's a plat, and there's a description, a survey, and a sketch. It shows it. If that's what you're referring to, Kindred Phase 2, Parcel 1, the school site. If you scroll on down, it shows the road network coming off of Red Canyon Drive.
But if they know exactly where they're gonna put it, then why the delay in giving it to us? Like, we don't have to build it, because at the school district, if they give it to us, we could delay it later. We don't have to build it right away, but they can give it to us where it's ours.
Just real quick, so when Kindred and Oakwood first came through, they were the rather large DRIs. We just knew they were mass communities, 7,500 units, 15,000 units, et cetera. So the preliminary conceptual plans had not been developed yet, so all we did was secure our place in the long-term development of the developments, and they were dedicated, not donated. So then as the preliminary plans come through and become more permanent, then we can start honing in on the exact location. And in this particular situation with Kindred, the first site is not the site we went with, and the new site we're on is a preferred site, not only by us, but by the county, and we like it much better than the first site that we looked at. And the newer developments, they're coming along with their preliminary when we're asking for the site, so we're starting to secure them more up front, like you'll see on one of the items tonight for Center Lake. But I have to say with Tahogwa and Kindred, they were just mass acreage where all we did was lock it in place. And now we're starting to secure those locations. And the first amendment for Kindred was nothing more than, unfortunately, the date was left off the original contract. And then the second amendment was we weren't ready to accept the site, and there had been a delay at the county for the construction of Cross Prairie Parkway, and I believe some Army Corps permits. And now this delay was also due to getting the road finished and the permits in place, and it will just push it out 6 months, but it won't impact when we are wanting to bring the site on for the
But
school
are we getting
itself.
priority treatment of where the placement is? Because I don't want them to continue, okay, we don't know what the map
Another
looks
good
like, it's
sites.
developing and we're not in consideration, because I don't wanna, again, my goal is, I don't wanna see us just get the leftover, somewhere in the corner where we didn't get priority seating.
This
of where-
particular site is actually better than the first site, and it's pretty square. It's high and dry. We had no kickbacks on the phase 1 or the endangered species. We're very happy with this site.
Julius, I wanna echo what you're saying, because it seems like historically, we always run issues with flooding and flooding fields and flooding, but because they don't give you the prime location. But I see what you're saying.
Members of the board, this project goes back to 2014.
Right.
Just, Fred, can we speak up? There's people.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not able to
This
hear.
project goes back to 2014. I can tell you that in dealing with some subsequent issues I have gotten with Rhonda in real estate and changed certain issues. For example, if somebody wants to identify a site, unless there's extraordinary reasons it can't be identified, identify it and do the due diligence at that time. Don't do the due diligence 7 years later and find out the site doesn't work for everybody. So we're revamping it, and when we go over the real estate process, we'll take it through with you. When I saw this, I understood it because it was a DRI, but it's confusing unless you really understand what the development of regional impact is and all the complexities. But in the future, if we're going to have a site identified, we need to do the due diligence right at that time before we do the deal to say, you know what, when they deliver that site, we can build on it. Not, we got all sorts of problems nobody knew about.
So are they committing to this?
They are
site
committing to a
with this
site that we
agreement?
can build on.
Okay.
That's what's in the original agreement. They have to deliver us a site that we're totally capable of building on.
What's the forecast? Because Tohoku and Kendra, they're coming out of the ground quickly. What's the forecast that we would need actually come out of the ground at this location?
So for the first school in Kindred, we have moved that school actually out to 24-25. It was impacted actually by the opening of us taking over Canoe Creek. And then the high school site is just outside the 10-year window. And of course, that could be contingent on the new look of our new high schools and any additional programs that we may implement through a choice that could help lower the enrollment as well as the comprehensive renovation at Gateway. And then the second K-8 inside of Tohoku is about 7 years after we would open Kindred. Of course, we review all of our track development every year. And then based on how cells are going and students are arriving, we move them forward and back as needed. But right now, the first one in that area is we would open Kindred August 2024.
My last concern, if I may, because of these delays, the appraised value of that land changes as well. Are we locked into what price for the impact fee? Are we locked into the 2014 where originally said there was gonna be it, or because we didn't identify a site? So now, are we gonna pay a little higher? I mean, at what point do we get an appraised value on that piece of property?
All of the mitigation agreements have either a 60 or a 90-day pre-closing date appraisal. So we do appraisal 60 to 90 days prior to the closing. And again, we will get an appraisal, the owner gets an appraisal. If they're within 10%, you average, and that's the price. If they're not within 10%, we share a third appraisal, and the two highest appraisals are averaged to determine the price that we will either cash purchase or do credits. With the developers, we do instant credits, not cash purchase.
So when is the timing of that? So it's not the timing now, because we're not approving. When does the clock start for us to begin to?
So Mark, you'll have to help me with this. So we'll back up 18 months for construction and then about 9 to 11 months for design and planning.
For design,
So
including permitting.
probably this coming 2021, we would need to do the appraisal and go ahead and convey and purchase the site because we'll need ownership of it to start what we're doing. And the one thing I do want to mention on this site is what we call ready to build. So when the developer provides it to us, all the water utilities, curb cuts, all the necessities are there. We just actually start adding the building, and they will be accepting all of our stormwater retention inside of the development, so we will not have to worry about stormwater retention.
Why can't we purchase it before to save money on the appraised value? It's just not built yet, just hold it, and then when it's ready to get built, to build it, so that way we can save, because, I mean, he's the appraiser, but I know that over time, the values have been going up, especially if, once the other house is built out, it's actually making it more valuable, because now you have more houses that are sold, you have more comparables.
That has been on the direction of the school board. I will say if we take it, we then have to start maintaining it as far as mowing, insurance, anything of that nature, but it's just always been the previous board's direction. We don't take it until we're ready to start movement on the site typically.
Would they be willing to sell it at today's prices and
lock it in? Yeah.
Well, no, let me
We're
hear me
probably
out.
6 months away. On this particular site, we're probably about 6 months away from starting the appraisal site.
I guess what you would be asking would be more like the Tahokwa sites, the high school and the K-8 site. You would wanna go ahead and take possession of those by doing appraisals today instead of waiting years out when we
Well,
actually
you
wanna.
can wait years out and do a retrospective appraisal. I mean, I do it all the time. You can do an appraisal based on a time period in the past. You still have the market data and the sales data, you just don't have to pay, I mean, it's common. I don't know if that's something that can be done.
I would have to yield to Frank and the school board if that is the direction you're
Let's take it
giving
in
staff.
stages. The ideal is to get the site identified up front and quite candidly acquired at that point at the cheapest value. The second would be to try and negotiate that if we're gonna get that site, you don't want to identify it, then we're gonna pay you at the level it was worth at the time we did the agreement. It's not gonna appreciate. And then the third is the developer who says, no, I'm not dedicating, I'm not doing this, and we'll face that if that ever happens. And the board will decide it. But those really would be your three options regarding the matter. The ideal would be that we pay for it, whether immediately or at the time we take ownership at the value when the agreement was first entered into.
We have the developer's representative here, she's going to say.
The other thing I would have to ask Mr. Frickenbacher is, since they include the ready to build,
Well, that would all be, in my opinion,
they couldn't
you
give
do
me
the
a ready to
appraisal,
build site
that would
now
all
for
be
10
figured
years
out.
from now.
you would appraise it as if it's ready to build at the time you appraised it. I think, in fairness to counsel, that's an economic issue she's gonna have to clear with the client. I mean, if
Yeah,
I was an
I guess
attorney,
I'm-
I wouldn't make any commitment
I'm
unless the
wondering,
client said, yeah, I'm willing to do that.
since what is the cost effectiveness of having it ready to build versus not? So, I mean, cause I feel like based on the agreement, they're putting forth quite a bit of work in order to hand over the land. So for me, the question would be, great, so we purchase it, it's completely undeveloped, what is gonna be the cost to us in not only time, but also money? So that's something that I think we might need to
Mark, you could address what it means.
consider before we start changing.
Well, there's lots of variations with the site development, it depends on elevations, the extent of clearing, is it heavy clearing, is it light clearing? So there's lots of variables that go into that cost. But typically, it is better for the developer to provide us with a mass graded site so that it can be cleared if there are any potential issues that may come up with that clearing. Then it's for that entity to address those as they're working through those activities.
You have to run the utilities to it.
See, that's why it's so
Water,
important to have a
sewer,
site
electric.
selection. That's what I was trying to say, like instead of, okay, we're doing this nebulous, we're gonna get some property, but we don't know exactly where, or it could change. They can show us one thing, I just wanna get it clear and
What's
say,
this
hey,
I'm
this is where
looking
we're gonna get it.
Part of the problem when you have a big development like this is they've gotta get it all rezoned and they haven't quite figured out what's going where. So you can't really identify it. We can talk about how do we accelerate it, but it is a difficult issue when you're dealing with a large site. Because they haven't figured out at that point where everything's gonna move.
Do you, I heard you say you believe that they have a site selected?
Julius, are you looking at the survey?
Yes. But I'm talking about, but is it amendable? I mean, just cause it's there, is there a commit language to say, okay, that's exactly where it's
Yes.
going? So we could spend some money to test the site and see if it's
Well,
acceptable?
I mean, the agreement has specifically what exactly is their responsibility versus ours. So I guess, to be honest, I'm really confused as to, can you help me understand what your concern is? Because it sounds like what your concern is that we are committing to a land site and you're not sure that that's the best site for the school. Am I understanding correctly?
Well, that too, but I'm concerned that first of all, that they haven't even committed to a specific land site. Because if
But
they've
they
committed to
have.
a specific land site, then we can actually do the initial testing to see if it's acceptable or not. And then if it's acceptable, then we can commit to it, and then the question to the board is, like what I mentioned earlier, do we prepay the land or lock in the rate now as opposed to waiting till we develop?
Alright,
Because it could be the economy can crash tomorrow, I mean, I don't wanna wish that on anyone, but then the whole development doesn't stop, you know what I mean?
To be clear, just so that I understand, you're looking at 14.02? Okay,
It might
so
be-
you wanna look at exhibit A, real property, it has all of the information there, is that what you're looking at?
I think we're looking at
Right, so I feel like it's pretty clear.
I just wanna make sure that I'm clear on what we're voting on, so we're clearing on, okay, is
Understood.
that the actual site selection? And that site selection doesn't get changed on us later. It's almost like putting it on the record, because then if we do another amendment, then I say, well, we kind of were giving you that site and we're giving it to
I know,
somewhere
but
else.
Julius, there's a very specific legal description here,
Yeah.
and that legal description is part of the contract. So when if we vote on this, we're voting on that legal description. So they can't, they wouldn't be able to alter or change it on us because we're committing to that. Is that correct? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, so for clarifications, we're still on 10.01.
Right.
Yes.
Is the third amendment, I heard somebody say 14.
I did.
Oh, sorry, okay.
I feel
So
like
we're definitely on
we were having both
10.01.
conversations at once, actually.
So,
In either
Mr. Bass, my
case,
apologies, what was
Here's
your
the
question?
question, the site's been identified.
It's definitely been
It's in the
identified.
agreement.
We've done
They
due
have to build
diligence.
that site, deliver it to us, ready to build.
Yes, and we've
There's
done our due
no confusion at
diligence.
this point.
We do not accept any sites without.
So is there
due diligence.
any due diligence
Yes, sir.
that we have to do before this board takes title to that property?
We've already conducted that, yes.
It's all done,
Yes, sir.
environmental, all the things we do,
Yes.
so.
Because usually, the reason why, because a lot of times we don't do testing of the site until after we do a purchase agreement, and then,
Oh,
so,
yeah, no, we don't take it without full due diligence.
so we've done due diligence, this is the site location. It ain't gonna change on us, the only thing that can change is how much we pay for it, not really pay for it, but it is, we're paying for it.
Because it's not
If
been
that's not-
appraised.
Okay.
Rhonda, I have a question. Has there been a study done that tells us if it would be more cost effective to buy this and maintain the land for X amount of time versus buying it at a later date at an appreciated value?
Myself is not, I'm not aware of the board ever doing that type of study during me being here or previous to me.
Do we have an idea of what it costs to maintain generally the pieces of land that we have bought earlier as opposed to later?
I guess I would have to yield to Ms. Thacker just on, think about the original Kendrick, that might be if even have gotten back there. You wouldn't even have had access to maintain it, correct? Because the road just became available. So in the bigger DRIs like we're talking about for Tohoku or at Kendrick, we would not have even been able to access the property to maintain it. So I'm not sure how a developer would feel about cutting out a block, going ahead and conveying it to us. We're liable for it, but we can't even get to it should something occur on it.
That being the case though, I've driven past some of these pieces of property and essentially they're just giant trees, right? I mean, it's not like the HOA is gonna send you a letter telling you to cut the tree down, right? Or to mow the lawn or anything. There's really no maintenance to be
There's
done.
only one right now that we do have to maintain. It's at the back of Old Hickory, and that is an active development, so we are having to send maintenance into there to make sure that it stays properly maintained, so we don't from the active development.
Do you have an idea generally what it costs to maintain that piece of property?
I can get with the director of maintenance and get that information for you, what it's costing him to send the crew out there to do that.
I think that it's a
And also, I'll interject, you know, our experience with some of these sites where there is some small clearings where we've had issues with dumping of debris or RVers, you know, they're having fun, but the problem is if they get hurt on our property, there is a liability to the school district. So, you know, typically we have to expend the cost to fence the site, secure the site to ensure that we're keeping people off it. People dumping debris, you know, and RVers and that type of thing.
Okay. Is it your professional opinion that it's worth paying the appreciated cost for these properties as opposed to maintaining them?
You know, there are various variables, but in my previous experience here and at another school board, we attempted to purchase the property just when needed to avoid those type of issues. But you know, there's lots of variables that play into it as well. So it's not a cut and dry, clean answer all the time.
That analysis should be done every month.
Yeah, and I'm willing to separate that into two different motions, to be honest with you, because that's almost like a separate issue. I think I feel comfortable with, okay, this is the site selection, we need to have a school, we're getting dedicated. I'm willing to motion to approve this with a second, with direction to staff to say, hey, give us the analysis of when to actually convey it, to actually, purchase it. And to me, to be honest with you, you're a property appraiser,
It's
man,
a
I'm leaning
gamble.
more to your.
Real estate is a gamble. If it wasn't a gamble, we'd all be rich, So I mean, there could be an advantage to us 5 years down the road. What if the market goes in the other direction and we do the appraisal? We're gonna, if you might buy, today might be the high price. 4 years from now, we might get a better, it's a gamble.
No,
To be honest, it doesn't seem like the school district is getting the best deals on these pieces of property. It seems like when they look at the school district, they're packed with cash, we're gonna get exactly what we can out of
May I
that
ask
property.
what are you basing that on, just so that I understand since we're having a discussion.
At the last workshop, Mr. Bass pulled out a bunch of the studies regarding the properties and we paid the most.
But the difference between that one and
That
this
was
one,
in
to
time.
your respect, just to clarity purposes, that one was an individual seller selling his vacant land. Here it's a DRI, where it's a master plan community, where they're just agreeing to set aside land for us. So they knew they were gonna build, and they're actually doing the proper thing. And I'll call a spade a spade, if somebody doesn't do something right, I'm quick to call it out. But to be honest with you, they're doing the responsible thing by applying to the DRI and actually saying, hey, they believe that a school site is needed, and they're willing to set aside a space for it. They can't control the market. They can't control the price of it. That's not, nobody can control the price. And it could go up or it can go down. So
Can we bring that answer back when we do the real estate workshop? Because there's a number of issues we need some direction on.
So, but I'm willing to, at this point, I feel like I have enough information and we've kind of discussed it for me to move forward with it. And if we wanna have our own conversation later to when that title conveyance can come, then we can negotiate with the developer and say, hey, look, we wanna, convey this property now. And so that's not for me to say, I'm saying? I'm just asking the board, that's my suggestion. I mean, if you guys agree with that train of thought, I'm willing to support something like that.
I'm fine with that. Now, Mr. Karpenbacher, is there, if I have a question regarding the conflict, would this be the time or would it be later on?
You can bring it up now if you want to. You can bring it up later if you want to.
Wait, so here's one concern, and I say this with all due respect and with a tremendous amount of reserve. One of the things that I campaigned on was conflict of interest-free government, and I think that was a big deal to a lot of the people that I spoke to, which is why I made it part of my campaign. And I understand that these types of things can happen under regular circumstances and so on. However, I do think that it's highly irregular that, the amount of questions regarding these and other properties. If we look at the 11 active property dealings that we have going on, this conflict of interest extends to 6 of them. And to me, respectfully, to me, that presents a problem. That seems like it's a lot, and it seems like me being in the same business, I could very easily extend my business dealings to the school I'm a sign maker, I sell signs, I can sell signs to the school district. And of course, that a school is a great piece of type of project to bid to. But to do it to the extent that it is occurring here in this situation seems to me excessive.
One clarification, is your concern with the fact that there's a conflict of interest in several areas? And the reason I'm asking, besides trying to understand and having a discussion with the board, is because I've had to, for 2 years on the board, I had to file conflict of interest probably every other meeting because of the company that I worked for, and I couldn't help it. So I'm confused as what is the main concern? Because I think at some point we're all going to have some kind of conflict.
I think that would be a choice.
I never had a conflict in the 4 years that I served.
Well, I worked for a
No, I
company
understand.
that provided services, and I respectfully and clearly filed my conflict, and I didn't vote on the issue, nor did I speak on it. So I'm concerned about what I don't feel like that's gonna be unique to.
Well, there's an issue of frequency, and I guess it's on a case by case basis. If you work for an employer and unreasonable. I guess I'm not a lawyer, but then in my brain, there's reasonableness because I don't expect you to lose your job to stay on the school board, you know, because that's kind of unreasonable, because that's your employment. But when you're a contractor, or you own the company, or you are bidding on contracts, that's a different kind of story. You know what I mean? So I can appreciate where he's coming from in that the frequency of it. Because here's another concern too, just to kind of mention it. Because and with no ill intent,
No, we're just having a
yeah,
discussion.
I'm just having an honest discussion, and I appreciate this. And with all due respect to the chairman, and I do know he's here, and I want to just make that clear. I'm not insinuating anything. But what can happen is, like what John mentioned, if there's 11 contracts, 6 of them are represented by one person, right? Well, businesses go, okay, I got a new development. What is my biggest chance for success to seeing it succeed? And they go, oh, wait a second. These people are hiring this person. So no communication at all. They're just looking at it and go, man, that might be my highest probability for success. So it could be like an indirect impact. So I don't mean direct, and I'm not insinuating anything at all, but just sometimes when the frequency is so high, it's not incidental. There may be 1 or 2, but when you look at 6 out of 10, it can give the impression to the public that something is there. And be honest with you, on the record, I do not believe anything is going on there. I have respect for everyone that's on this board, and I also have respect for Mrs. Thacker. I've seen her. She's excellent. She was the former county attorney. She is really good at what she does. You know what I mean? So it could be that people were just hiring her because she was the best. So we don't really
So
know.
why not assume positive intent, I guess is my
Because we're
question.
elected officials and we have to respond back to the
I
people.
think we all are. No, hold on.
We have
You know
a
what?
I'd like
fiduciary
to
I don't wanna
respond to that.
derail,
I'd like to respond
no,
to
I'm
that.
gonna finish my statement. I don't wanna derail the conversation because we clearly have actual business to attend to. But here's a challenge that happens when we clearly do not assume positive intent in front of the public. Like you stated, when we start eroding the public's trust, it's not just eroding it for this board, it's eroding it for the entire government system. And that's a problem, okay?
And that's what this conversation is for.
Absolutely, I appreciate it as long as, all I'm asking from everyone on this board, and if I haven't made it clear in the past 3 weeks, I will make it clear now, is to assume positive intent of each other. That's all I'm asking. I think we should ask all of the questions at every point because transparency, like you said, is important, but I also want to make sure that we are assuming positive intent of each other. That's all. Wherever the conversation takes us, I appreciate it, and you will and can ask questions, but if we start assuming the worst of each other on this dais, imagine what's gonna happen out there.
Ms. Castillo, I think that what we're doing right now is preventing the discussion going on out there that
Exactly.
we should be having right
Bingo.
here.
Here,
And the
in
fact is
sunshine.
that nobody's, me, at least in my business practice, I don't assume anything. I ask, I figure it out, and then I know with a sense of clarity what the situation is. It would be improper for me to have these questions and not make the comment at this position. And in fact, it was today, I had a discussion with Mr. Kroppenbacher who came to me and stated there was this issue because he knew that I didn't want to be shocked by it. And if I don't have the opportunity due to sunshine laws to contact anyone else on the board and then make my, present a question of this sort. So we're trying, excuse me, let me finish my statement now. What I'm trying to do is state this in a business-like manner, one that is of consequence of tens of millions of dollars, of 11 projects. Let's say that those are at very least is going to be a $60 million expenditure. And if our chairman cannot vote on $60 million, which is of the 2 things that are incredibly important when you get elected to the school board, one being kids, the other being the stewardship of all the money that we have, it's to create a situation where you're gonna cast doubt on myself because I'm asking the question, I think is improper on your part. The fact is, if you look at the newsletters that just came out, which I read today, trying to catch up to all my duty, and let me pull this out here for you so I can read it verbatim. It states, this is in our newsletter that we send out to our population. This goal details our emphasis on building confidence and trust among all internal and external stakeholders and brings our special programs, education choices, and innovation and community relations departments together to meet various needs of our students and community. So when we're stating that in a newsletter to go to the public, and then you create a doubt in us individually because we're asking the correct question, I resent that very
I
much.
think that you can ask any questions, and I repeat, I think the discussion is valid, but I do ask as a board that we assume positive intent of each other. Is that an ask that I shouldn't be having from a
No,
board
because,
that needs
because
consensus?
it should be conditional.
Mr.
I didn't get
Fair
elected.
It
access
isn't
to make a
conditional.
I didn't get elected to be
decision.
conditional. They say, Julius, I'm only gonna elect for you for a specific reason. I'm here to do my job. This is
I
professional.
understand. You know what?
Nobody needs to
I
get
got it.
emotional.
I got it.
Hey guys,
Bait and switch, I got it. I'm finished with the conversation simply because it's not conducive to the public right now. I feel like the conversation we're having is,
board members.
let me apologize to Mr. Arguello if I at any point seem like I was casting doubt on you. I'm not. I think that you have the right to ask any question. But I will tell you that I'm very protective of the business that we do on this board. And when we cannot work together because we are bringing up issues that seem to be personal, and I could be wrong about that. And if I am wrong about that, I apologize. It's not,
You could not be more wrong.
okay, fantastic, thank you for correcting me. What I am concerned about, and I think that since we're having this conversation in the public, is that
That's what it should be.
We
We should
have-
be having the conversation in private.
may I finish, please? We are starting to have the appearance of a trust issue on the board, which is fun, and it could be very interesting to watch from outside, but at the end of the day, trust costs money. That's all I have to say about that. I apologize if at any point I made you feel or I insinuated that I was doubting you, because I'm not, because I am assuming positive intent. But trust costs a lot to build, and it also costs millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you for bringing up your points. I appreciate it. I think that it is important to have these conversations. And I didn't mean to insinuate that you were doing anything incorrectly or that you shouldn't ask the questions. Of course you can. But I do think that there may be a little bit of a challenge with trust right now, and that can be quantified, is all I'm saying. So,
Okay.
if we
Well,
can-
I trust
My
that.
turn. First of all, God bless y'all for running for office, because this is gonna be healthy, because they now see that you are genuinely interested and you are genuine in your campaign and in yourself. I wanna bring this back around to X's and O's. We all know where Kindred is. We know Kindred is growing, and we need a school site there. Regardless of who's the representative, we need a school site there. It just so happens Ms. Thacker is the representative, is the attorney representative of the developer. If she were to be fired tomorrow, we're still gonna be addressing this specific issue. So I think that's what's before us right now, is regardless of any abstentions or whatever, we need to move forward with securing this school site, because if we don't secure these school sites, these developers are just gonna turn and walk away, and then we're really gonna be stuck. So I just wanna stay united with that, if we can, please.
Thank you.
I would like for the record to make a statement that, number one, I think that this kind of conversation is in the best interest of the people, and it's what creates trust. It's what allows the people out there to trust what's going on in here, number one. Number two, it's unfair to create a fight over a question. And the question is, we have a situation, we had our reorganization meeting 3 meetings ago, I think. We voted for a chair, and our chair is abstaining from $60 million of expenditures and half of the projects that we have going on. That's a legitimate question. And it's not a matter of my trust in the chair.
What would you like me to do about that? What would be your suggestion?
Best case scenario, sir, just because you asked me,
Yeah, I did, I've asked.
I think, yes, I don't think that the chair should be in a situation where he's not allowed to speak on an issue because he has to recuse himself. To me, I think that that's unfair to the district that you represent. It's unfair to us as a board. It's unfair to the community at large. So if you knew that you were going to recuse, and this is the issue, there's a sense of knowledge in advance, and if we knew that was going to happen or that was going to be a situation, then we should have organized the board differently so that it wouldn't be at a consequence of the board and the community.
But he would still have to abstain if he wasn't the chair.
Yes, but he would also not be, he would be advocating from the edge as opposed to from the front. I'm sure you can acknowledge that the optics of our chairman's spouse representing half of our land deals for tens of millions of dollars may seem improper to somebody out there, even if there's absolutely no wrongdoing.
Could I say one thing?
Yes.
Because you raised, only because I'm a lawyer and I do know this legal community. Ms. Thacker doesn't get hired because of being married. She gets hired because, I can tell you, because before I ever came here, she was the go-to lawyer if you had to deal with Osceola County. And so everybody understands, we're a blip in the development, an important blip. But the real rubber meets the road when you sit down with the county and start talking about density, roads, infrastructure, what they want, what they don't want, rezonings or not. That's her phenomenal expertise. On our side, just for the record, we don't give her any quarter. I mean, the reality is, generally, Rhonda, we're dealing with the developer themselves. And it's only when Rhonda says, we have an agreement on all this, that we start working on the agreement. I only say this so that the public realizes this is a whole big picture that goes on. And I can tell you, if I was in Orange County and I represented anybody that had to deal with Osceola County, everybody over there would tell you, call Jo Thacker. She's a really talented lawyer who knows the county.
And her husband sits on the school board.
That I can just tell you, I know I wouldn't hire anyone else for the county. And the reality is, we generally have never seen the issue smack us or be an issue. Perception's a whole different issue.
Well, perception is certainly what I'm addressing here, because as you mentioned to me earlier, according to your understanding, there's no legal violation of anything. So, but definitely the perception in our job to not say anything and to if we don't address it, then how can we move forward in good conscience and how can we be trusted? If we talk about trust, all of us were elected because of the trust that the population, the citizens of the county have in us, not because of the trust that we have in one another.
No,
In
the
fact,
trust we have in one another is important.
Absolutely. That's not even mentioned. But if you compare the two, the trust that I've known Julius for 25 years. But I guarantee you, if Julius came up here and then I realized that he had $60 million worth of money, where he was representing as the broker, I'm gonna be up here and I'm gonna question Julius and I'm gonna say, at the very least, the public deserves an answer as to why that's okay.
Let me make sure the public who's watching this knows one thing. No board member can deal with any business with the district. You are completely prohibited from engaging in business with the district. So in this dialogue, I don't want anybody who's watching to go, oh my God, they may be doing business. It can't happen.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so
So where do we go?
what are we doing?
Where are we going? Do
Thank you
said
for
you
that
said
lively
a motion.
discussion
A motion.
where we're all gonna get, yeah,
Okay,
thank
alright,
you.
let's go with,
What are we doing?
I think Julius was gonna make a
Yeah,
motion.
yeah, I'll go ahead and, like I said, I understand what's out there, and I think this is a healthy discussion, this is the democracy that we live in, and that's what this is for. We have these conversations and we're free to do that. With that, I do know them each, and I have full faith and sure that Chairman Thacker is doing the appropriate thing. He's filed his documents, he made his discussion, and I'm okay with that, and I'm fine with that, and I trust that. So with that, I will motion to approve item 10.01 with the condition that staff look at the analysis of the possibility of maintaining the site, the cost differential between maintaining the site to buy it later, to purchase it now and maintain it, or to do normally, just not do anything with it and let the title convey when we're ready to build.
And you want that on every deal.
10.01 or 14.01, may I?
No, it's 10.01. This is the school mitigation plan with DR Horton. Yeah, he has multiple properties. Yeah, and Joe Thacker is representative of both, so it's gonna be the same issue.
The reason I'm asking is because it seems like there was already a motion made.
I don't think so.
Am I?
No, there wasn't on 10.01.
No, 10.
That's where the whole discussion came up. But I'm okay with that, and this is healthy for democracy, healthy for the board.
It was
And,
pulled.
Voted for consent, remember?
I understand. I got it now. Thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion and you need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so all those in
Okay, so
favor?
can we just, I just wanna clarify, so we're moving forward with it, with one little caveat being just to
At the
do an
next board meeting,
analysis.
staff will give us an
At
analysis.
at the workshop on real estate, we're gonna go through and get direction on a number of
Right,
issues.
and if that cost is over, and we're just gonna revert back to in its purest form here that we've got in front of us.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I have a motion from Mr. Melendez and a second from Mr. Arguello. Any discussion? All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0 with one abstention. We at 14.01 now?
Brings us back to 14.01,
Thank you.
1 and 2. We need to do these separately, Tom.
Yes, please, that one too, facilities, yes, thank you.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve 14.01.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Castillo, and a second by Mr. Bass,
Discussion.
to approve item 14.01. Mr. Linda?
I see that this is a contract ad of $352,000. It says, when I read the contract, it says, to deal with the new SRS standards 2020 versions, they had to rechange it. But I don't know the full history. Was the site changed on this one? So are they changing the proposal from one site to another site?
We just moved it.
You had to move the location of the original site, Mr. Melendez, and this allows it to reset along the road, and takes it, into a better space for the district.
And, well, I don't wanna be too hard, because I know this has been a difficult meeting, but I have to ask the question. Then why wasn't that identified before? Because that mistake now is costing us $350,000.
Because when the deal was done prior to this board and this staff, they did not identify the site and do the due diligence. So when we got the deal from Rhonda, we did due diligence, we identified a number of issues that resulted in us having to move the site. And that is why I go back to, if you're gonna commit, you gotta know what the site is when you commit. Or at least know that whatever land you're gonna get is safe, et cetera.
See,
So,
well, this actually justifies my concerns earlier, when I was talking about, I wanna have a defined site, so that way we know exactly what it is as early as
And
possible.
some-
Have you spoken?
I think that one was a little bit,
This one, this site though, if we'd had a defined site, we had to adjust the site because of something they found with some gas pipelines. So if we'd have bought the other site, we'd have the wrong one.
in fairness to the developer on this. There were issues with the developer. The reality is, when the school board committed, they should have done their due diligence prior to that commit, so there were no issues. It's just, we're not gonna have that problem again.
Just using it as a
On
learning
new
tool,
ones.
teachable moment where we can be able to adjust there.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a different situation though. It's not the same.
Well, the point is, we're still paying extra for it. I motion to approve, the item as submitted, 14.01.
We already have a motion by Ms. Castillo and a second by Mr. Bass on the floor. Any other further questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, motion by Ms. Castillo, second by Mr. Bass. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries 5-0. 14.02, I guess we can go through all this again. I have the same conflict on this item. My wife represents, I guess the owner, developer, I'm not sure. And due to the appearance of conflict, I will not be voting on this item, and I will fill out the appropriate Form 8B paperwork.
So,
On this one,
no, please.
the only concern that I have on this one is on staff analysis. It says that, we do site preparation, but the cost of the construction of the road, which I understand, well, actually, the construction of the road, remember on the Knightsbridge property? We were able to work with the developer to only be liable for half of the cost of the construction of the spine road. So I wanna be able to see, are we, I don't wanna be 100% liable. If I can negotiate, I wanna negotiate a term that's favorable to the district, that's similar to how we negotiate other sites. So on Knightbridge, the Spine Road was shared 50-50. So I would like to be able to maybe change that contract language where it says we can share the cost of the construction of the road with the developer 50-50, so that way we're uniform in the way that we treat all our properties. And then the other item is including wetland mitigation. Again, that kind of talks about, no, this is my second item, and that'll be done.
Okay, no worries.
Because that we can address both of them at the same time, I appreciate that. Like the wetland mitigation, again, that's a concern where they give us the leftover property, they develop the premium, which is their right to do, and then, but we shouldn't have to pay to get that wetland up to snuff, you know what I mean? Or, and the only way that's fair, in my mind, is if it does get appraised at wetland price. So, you know what I'm saying, it should be one or the other. So if it's a wetland, and that's what they're giving us, then we should pay the appraised value of a wetland. We shouldn't have to pay for the mitigation to convert it to high and dry, then appraise at high and dry. So I just wanna make sure that we're clear on that. Because it does say, it goes may be deducted from the education and impact fees. And I don't want wetland mitigation to be deducted from the impact fee, and then at the same time, pay a higher appraised value of it being high and dry.
So for clarification purposes, the language in the Center Lake agreement is should we need the site before Center Lake is ready to come through, we would pay for the road up front. And then as Center Lake comes through and starts their development, they will reimburse us for the road. So that's not even going to be a road share, they're actually paying for all the roads in their developments. Again, this is another site that has moved numerous times between the city of St. Cloud, Osceola County's input and ours. And again, after many conversations, you agree this is the better of all the locations we have been to date. So a lot of times the sites are also impacted by the local entities because they have a lot of input over, they will actually let us place our schools inside of these developments. So again, the road will be totally reimbursed, and I'm not aware of any wetland mitigation in this one. That's what I thought, if I recall correctly, so.
Michael and Jill, when we have the property, we went over this a couple of months ago. When we have the property appraised, we're looking at the value of the net buildable acres.
Generally, yeah.
Right, we're taking out the stuff you couldn't build on in terms of the value,
If you want to
correct?
mitigate, you can.
Yep.
You're getting the land for free.
That's right.
Or we set a value of like $100 for 100 acres, like we pay $1 per acre for the wetland.
Yeah, it's net buildable, but that net buildable, the non-buildable portion is the wetland. But if we mitigate the wetland and make it buildable, then we just increase the price of what we're paying
The
for.
land is free, the wetland is free.
Free, we get
So
that
if you
for free.
mitigate for $40,000, you get it for free, it costs you $40 to mitigate, you
Ah,
got
okay,
that.
okay, I got you, okay,
No,
I'm
no,
glad,
no.
okay, that clears
We-
it up.
we-
Okay, so we're not, you know what I'm trying to say, I just didn't want it to be the other end, you know, I didn't wanna pay for the building it, then so I pay a higher appraiser. Because we don't appraise values, but I'm figuring out right away, we appraise it later.
That issue came up about 5 months ago, not here, but in our real estate meeting, and that got clarified real quick. We're not paying for property that's gotta be mitigated like that.
Okay, then I'm fine, I'm okay with that, at least for the rest of the board, alright, kids, but those were my main concerns, and we'll address satisfactorily.
Any other discussion?
And I think you used to.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, so the motion by Mr. Bass, a second by Mr. Argüello. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye, any, motion passes 4-0 with one abstention.
Brings us now to the public comment portion of our meeting. We've got two have been submitted this evening. I'll give you 3 minutes to speak if you can come to the podium over here. First one, Tina Wyroff. Is that close?
You got it closer than last time.
Okay. I'm gaining on it then.
Tina Wyroll, 255 Stemwood Court, Kissimmee, Florida. I'm just here, I know we talked to Mr. Bass and Mr. Arguello on Wednesday, and a group of us were gonna come today. There was some conflict with SAC and some other things. But I just wanna I sent them a bunch of stuff. The city does do sharing of days. And I sent them what the city does, City of St. Cloud, so that we can look at moving forward to changing the school board rules so that we can share days with people under mitigating circumstances.
Tina, do you happen to know if the county does that?
The county does not right now.
Okay, I thought they did.
Because my brother works for the county and they do not. But the city of St. Cloud does, and I sent that paperwork to Ms. Culver to share with you guys. But I think that it's very doable looking at their plan. And so I just wanted to kind of just reintroduce myself and say that I would really like to see us move forward on this issue.
Mr. Thacker, is there a GoFundMe account to help that family?
I believe there is.
You know the name of
Ms.
it?
Chokas, do you know if there's a GoFundMe?
There was, I'm not sure if it's still continuing. There was one set up a few weeks ago.
I can get that information and send it on.
If you
I'm sure
could.
somebody at school has it, I don't.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
Next, Mr. Allen.
I'll push right up against 3 minutes, but I think I can. So this is Larry Allen, Osceola County Education Association, 722 Mabott Street. Hopefully you can hear me. When I was an Army officer, I'd get together, I'd advocate for my troops, and whenever they had an issue, they'd come to me. Can you hear me?
I can tell you've been struggling all night, we're struggling.
Anyway, when my soldiers had a problem, they'd come to me. Between my sergeant and myself, we try to figure out the issue. If we could not get it handled, we'd send it up the chain of command. And you are our chain of command as far as education goes. And we need your help in the next legislative session. So we got a couple points here. Investment. We want you to advocate for Osceola County. Is there a microphone or something? Because you're having a tough time hearing me.
I can hear you now. I can hear you, they can all hear you.
We'd like for you to educate for investment in traditional public school employees and infrastructure. For decades, we've been underfunded, even before COVID. There's a report came out where Florida is third in population, fourth largest economy, but we're 43rd in ed funding. Everybody wants this to be the year of the educator or the educator governor, but money talks, and our students need stability. They need those paras, those bus drivers, those cafeteria workers. They need to make a connection at the school, and it might very well be one of those people. If they make a connection at the school, they're more likely to graduate, their grades go up, and the instances of violence go down. So that's something that's kind of important, I would think. Number two, multi-year contracts. Again, we need a stable workforce, and it saves money in the long run. If you've ever hired people, you know there's a cost to re-educating those people and bringing them into the fold so they understand the culture that they're working in. And if you think back, you probably had some adult at school that's been there for like 30 years. For me, it was Mr. Grady. He drove our bus. Nobody messed with Grady because he knew everybody's parents. And he was the guy that kept things under control. And he's a trusted member of our community. Next point is the FRS. Our retirement system is in the top 3 in the country. Please don't let it be another 2011 where they 3% contribution, they extended the years, they made changes to drops, and accountability. High stakes testing. Things are happening in students' lives we have zero control over. Zero. We don't know if their parents are working, if their parents are fighting because they're not working. We don't know if they have enough food, heat, etc. And in a normal year, the testing, they only get about 8 months, but you're supposed to get a year's worth of growth in a normal year. Now throw COVID on top of that. So we don't think that testing is a smart idea. And lastly, local control. The school board, you guys consist of local people elected by local voters, and you manage local affairs. So we'd like for Florida to stay out of our business and not say, this is the money, but this is how you're gonna spend it, and not hold it over your head. So we hope that you advocate for us, Osceola County. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. talk about? Do you have any issues?
Yes, we have a closed executive session on litigation following this meeting. A court reporter will be present who will transcribe. The only items that can be discussed in that meeting are litigation strategies and or settlement. The two items will be Guerrero as parent and natural guardian of JSM, a minor, versus the school board, case number 2020 CA 0000804-ON. Second case will be Rosemary Nazio et al. Versus Osceola County School, case number 2019 CA 003312-ON. They are both in the Circuit Court of Osceola County, Florida. The people in attendance will be the board members, the superintendent, and the chief financial officer, and myself. We will recess this meeting, go into that meeting, and then Mr. Thacker, unless you change what we normally do, you'll adjourn from up there. Correct. And be done. And then, second, since it's our last meeting, I wish all of you a happy, safe, and healthy Christmas and New Year to you, and I will continue to tell you how privileged I feel to represent you, the superintendent and staff that I think is the best I've ever seen.
Brings us to unfinished business. The sick leave, bank.
Mr. Thacker, if I may, and then I'm sure, everyone else will have comments. The board did task us with doing some investigation into research and other potential policies. I shared all of that information with you in your board update last Friday. I want to thank Mr. Boyd for gathering that information. And as you know, changing policy typically is a multi-stepped process that involves public hearings and lots of other things. However, we do have a draft policy for your review. I also sent that to you on Friday. It is built on the concept of our sick leave bank, so that an individual with mitigating circumstances could submit an application. Donors could be willing to indicate their willingness to donate. You can read through that. They need to have a minimum of 10 days. It would be limited to 40 days, which is the same as our sick leave bank. And we would have the same committee that reviews our sick leave bank requests, review these requests as well. If the board so desires to take immediate action under an emergency rule change, we would come back during our regular process and work it through with public hearings in our next rulemaking cycle, but it would allow us to implement and move forward should the board decide that's the direction that you want to go.
Mr. Thacker, to do that, you as chair would need to determine there was an emergency, given the facts that developed. Put it on the agenda, the board would vote based upon the emergency to adopt it. And then as the superintendent pointed out, we would go through the normal process after that, of adopting it or changing it, whatever the board deems appropriate.
The emergency would be if we wanted to adopt it tonight.
Yes. Well, the emergency would be because of what's happened with that employee that the board wants to help. You would find that to be the cause to put it on the agenda as an emergency.
Board, what do y'all think? Is this?
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So this was the meeting that Mr. Bass had mentioned earlier. I'm gonna pass on, they did their own research, which they sent to me. Let me pass these down. When we met, obviously this was an extraordinary situation. There was a teacher, a very young, wonderful teacher who had, whose child passed. All the teachers got together, they sent us a letter, which we're all familiar with at this point, that they all signed it, they all wanted to contribute time to it. I'm not sure, just to cut it short, just because the meeting's going a little bit long, but I'm not sure that this policy that we have before us would address that teacher's issue. And then I'll look for clarification for that in just in a minute. But you can see that there are people, there are municipalities that do accept a program like this, St. Cloud, and then I guess the city as well. So I'll give you a minute to review those.
Yeah, the only concern would be is that without reading the whole thing right away is I mean it's not a concern like it's a negative concern. It's just something that we think about. Is it a day for a day or do we prorate based on the person's salary? So let's say the person has, I'm making it up, $100,000 salary. This other person has a $50,000 salary. So when they donate one day, so then they donate just 2 days to that person because if they're giving up a day, because we don't want to donate a fraction. I mean, at least that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? To donate one day and they just prorate it to the new person.
So
But or the opposite is true. I just want to finish that thought process. Let's say you have 50,000 and you're donating to somebody who makes 100,000. You're only donating a half a day to them because that's what it's worth. So to me, that's the only issue because that way there's no fiscal change. Because when we budget our salaries and our sick leave, we base our sick leave based on whatever rate of pay that we do, and that way there's really no financial impact to the district.
Well, there's.
I'm sorry, Dr. Pace has that.
Well, certainly, Mr. Argolia, if you wanna go first, I was just, and Tammy, you can help me if I'm incorrect, but I think with our sick leave bank and our intent with this was, we would not worry about the value of the day based on other people's salaries.
Just a day for a day.
It's just a day for a day.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
And if you make $100,000 and somebody else makes 50 and the 50 wants to donate to me, that's okay, it would be your day, and vice versa, but it would be a day for a day. And in terms of would this particular situation qualify, if you look under B, 5-B, compassionate sick leave may be used by eligible employees who have been exhausted all types of accrued leave and need sick leave due to a catastrophic serious health condition or a life-altering event of a member of the employee's immediate family.
Yeah, I'm all fine with that.
So there's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying I agree with that. You can still talk, but I'm saying that I agree. That was really my only concern.
There's no restriction then from family member to family member. When I read this, I had that impression. So one person can give it to someone else. One of the concerns, I don't wanna make this about me, I wanna make it about the teachers that raised this concern. Their concern was that they worked for this time, right? That it's their time, and that when they left the school district, they had to be paid to them anyways. So they were concerned with having unnecessary restrictions on the transfer of that time and money that they had earned. So if as Mr. Melendez mentioned earlier, if there's a budget, you know what the cost attributed to this employee is for the sick bank, then I'm not so sure that the reasons, well, there's no reasons given, but obviously every organization has the impulse to control how these things are done, right, with good reason. In this case, number one, I wanna make sure that it would be retroactive so that this teacher would have access to these sick bank days. And then if you could, explain the limitations on this time or money that belongs to them. Because I think that when I reach back out to those teachers, that's gonna be the bulk of my explanation to them is that I'm gonna spend my time explaining to them why there's any restrictions at all on their transfer of their time and money. Please.
With all due respect, we prepared for you some pros and cons based on John's research of other school boards, public entities around. And without some parameters, what you wanna do to help one person when you turn it into policy for 8,000 potential employees can really create some HR challenges in terms of discrimination, yes, all of those types of things. And should I decide to give you my leave today and then you next week go on vacation, or not next week, but 3 months from now, everything's hunky-dory and you're going on vacation, will I resent that if there weren't some parameters put into place? So that would be my caution. I understand that as an employee, my sick leave is my sick leave. When I leave the organization, I'm gonna be paid for it in accordance with statutory limitations and my length of service. But long-term and big picture, I would recommend that we have some cautionary measures in place, as we've described, kind of based on a similar thing to our sick leave bank, just so that we wanna do what's right for this employee, but we also wanna make sure we're looking at the big picture for 8,000 employees.
And this does this would apply to that particular employee. I just wanna make sure that I understand it correctly, that it would.
If you make a motion to approve this on an emergency basis, I would add, you want it retroactive to the date that that employee needed it.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta be careful how far back you go.
Yeah, to me, it would be the date of the horrible tragic
And,
event.
well, that's the, I think that Tammy would be the.
They'll figure that out.
I'd like to make that motion.
So this is an emergency order?
Yes.
Does it meet the legal standing of an
Yes.
emergency order?
Went over it,
Wait a minute,
John
we have a
did,
motion on the floor.
I'll second.
to answer your question, John did a great job of researching this. I've dealt with these a lot in my career, and Dr. Pace is right. To start out, you want some governing things. You'll always be able to tweak as you move down the road and run into things. But this gets you going.
Is Mr. Boyd here? I am. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. I can see that you're very good at your job.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mr. Aguirre, second by Mr. Bass, to accept this document, correct? It's an
Yes.
emergency acceptance with an additional provision for retro, the case at hand, that you can figure out. Any other, did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only issue was that, does it have legal standing to justify the emergency order?
Yes.
Because I don't want somebody challenging it if they wanna say, hey, it wasn't properly done. So I just wanna make sure that this,
If
the
some,
event
And
here.
as chairman, I will declare this as an emergency.
if some Grinch comes in here and challenges it, I'm gonna win.
I just,
Do I need to declare that it's emergency, or is that done through the motion itself?
I would, for the record, declare
For the record, we
the
declare that
emergency
we
exists
have an
due to
emergency sick leave issue. We will be addressing it tonight. And we do have that motion on the floor, made by Mr. Arguelles, second by Mr. Bass. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries 5-0. Brings us to Tina, thank you for continuing to follow up on this.
Thank you guys, because that was the outcome I was looking for, and thank you for all your research.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for being good and kind.
Yes. New business, we had something early on that was moved to new business in the agenda modifications, didn't we?
Yeah, Mr. Bass.
I did write it down.
Yes.
The Newman property.
Yes,
Mr. Bass.
okay, I don't guess if there's any, we just discussed the Center Lake DRI. In, everybody who knows the DRI, Development of Regional Impact, is not just your typical PD. You know, it's on a much larger scale for them. You know, I was looking at the agenda and I remember that there was a parcel of land that came before the previous board. And there was discussion brought up for the purchase of it. So after going through the facilities workshop and the numbers that they presented to us, we've got to get that bus barn off of Michigan Avenue, Michigan. It's been there since I was a kid, and that's been a long time ago. We had to pedal with our feet to get out. But anyways, it's just getting too crowded in that area. They reported us at the facilities, I think it's a savings of what, $262,000 per year if we were to relocate it to a better location. This parcel of land on Nova Road would satisfy that. But it's dual purpose. And not only would it satisfy that, it would also satisfy the site for a future new school. And this parcel abuts the Center Lake DRI. And there's developable properties that's behind this, this 100 acres that we possibly could work and not leverage, but just negotiate and having them put decel lanes or a traffic light. So I'm looking at all the positives. I tried to analyze the pros and the cons, and it makes sense to move forward with the purchase of this site. Developers are chewing up land all over the place, and we're feeding from the same trough. And if we just let them, you know, if we sit back and let it all be taken into account, then we're not gonna have anything to choose from. I spoke with the family and they've got people standing in line wanting to purchase it for development, but this is a local family and they live here, they wanna retire here, they want to sell it to the school district, so it's kind of a win-win. So that's why I wanted to kind of reach back in the archives and bring that forward for discussion today. And Rhonda, I'd like your input on this too, because you know more about this particular parcel than anyone. And you can tell me or at least give me some validation of if what I'm saying is true and accurate, and if it's in the best interest to move forward.
Before you do that, Rhonda, I need to declare.
I know.
I don't know, I'll fill out the form, I don't know if we're not voting, if I have to do that, I will stay out of the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it.
Cover everything, mitigation, so they know the whole deal.
So the property first came to our attention about 2 years ago in pre-app at the city of St. Cloud. The Newman family came to a pre-application meeting at the city of St. Cloud, and they basically were asking the city, what is the best use for this property and how would you like to see us as a long-term family move forward on this property? And of course, there was a lot of discussion. So my staff member came back and brought it to me because even then, for almost 3.5 years, we've been looking for transportation sites on both the east and the west side of the county. So that was our first intention was to move it forward as a transportation depot. At the same time as staff looks every year at our long-term growth, we started realizing that Harmony High School is going to be full in about 2 to 3 years, and Tohopa-Caliga could be full in 5 to 7. And with all of the development coming in and the long-term coming in on the Northeast District, as the Mormon property Desiree Ranch begins to convert, Triple H is now converting all of their groves through a comp plan at the state of Florida. We realized we were going to need another high school between Tohopa-Caliga High and Harmony High, and the property just really fell into place. So as Mr. Bass stated, it is basically across the road from one of the entrances for Center Lake. So theoretically, we could almost be building a K-12 environment because Center Lake is a K-8 school site and the high school would be a 9-12. So we started pursuing it for both uses. The demand is there, but as the pandemic has come through, some of the changes in our income has also changed. We kind of have to take that into consideration on purchasing the whole site or a portion of the site. As we moved on through all of the due diligence and the family began to get more and more interest from developers, because originally we only had a neighbor of Pine Grove of about 375 homes. Since we've begun our due diligence, everything around that property has been purchased or is in the process of being purchased for development. So as such, we decided to continue to pursue it for both, and then the family no longer was going to provide us the offer to split the property. It became an all or none situation. So that's kind of where we are. We went through all the due diligence. We did a phase 1, we did a phase 2, we did an endangered species. We've done the traffic analysis and traffic warrant. And really the 2 outstanding items are the phase 2 kick back an area of wetland that we were going in to determine the depth, if there is any muck that would give us a problem with building our high school prototype. There was a little controversy over whether it's 12 acres or 20 acres. We have mixed opinions on that because we did not complete the geotech, but a lot of us took into consideration this has been one of the rainiest seasons on record for the last couple of years, so we think there was a little misconception on it being 20. We do think it's going to be more of a 12-acre wetland when we take the long-term look at it. And that was the only thing that our 2 prototypes for the transportation and the high school become a very tight fit on the property. So at this point, we were trying to create a prototype where we would not have to put any buildings on the wetland area. So we would bring the buildings to the back of the property and put the road and the parking of the high school out by Nova. We can tell you Osceola County would like us to reverse that put the high school buildings up toward the front of the road and put all the parking in the rear. And so far, we do not have a prototype that would allow us to put the buildings on the site without impacting the unknown wetland area. So to move forward, we would want to finish out the geotechnical aspect to see exactly what's in that 12 to 20 acre spot. And we would need to finish the survey for a
How
title.
stringent is the county on the placement of the building? Like,
Say that again?
how stringent is the county in saying that it can't be in the back, that, you know?
Their land development code is pretty stringent. I mean, SRIP pretty much states what we do on our property is what we want to do on our property. However, we want to be good neighbors with all of the entities and try to build.
I've seen like schools, like for instance, like Eastlake along Bucket Creek. I see the parking lot in the front and the school in the back.
We have had some issues where we've had to remind the county, you're overstepping your authority, and we're our own constitutional entity, so we're not doing it. It's sort of like we have a great relationship with them, and you never know when somebody asks that of Rhonda, is it a staff, there have been times where a staff person here asks for it, and we go to a higher up and they go, we don't care if you put it in the front or the back. So we have to work through these processes to get.
You know, my main concern, it's not really a concern, you always wanna forecast and limit your liability in the district. And we know, the things that we do know, we need a transportation facility right now, and we can fast track that and build that. And then we know we're gonna have excess land that we potentially could put a school. What we don't know is what will traditional brick and mortar be 10 years down the road. Because of COVID, we may go into more of a digital atmosphere. But then again, what we do know is that we're gonna have land in a prime location that I'm 80 or 90% sure that we could sell it if need be. And then the third, we're gonna be gaining $260,000 a year in savings by relocating our transportation. So I'm trying to look at any negative flaw here, and I don't really see any wrinkle that would be a true negative.
Mr. Bass, the only thing I'd ask of the board, if the direction is to pursue this, you authorize us to pursue it expeditiously and rapidly so that the Newmans aren't out there waiting and waiting and waiting.
We've been waiting for a
That
long
we
time.
we bring this to closure.
And then the reality too is I'm a real estate broker and I can tell you, it's hard to find 100 acres of continuous land anywhere in this county. You know, the development's just, you know,
And
popping
that
out left and
location
right.
is really the best location.
Right. So, and again, I saw that with Center State coming in, and then also the land to the south of it, it's vacant now, but it could possibly be converted later. Cause you know, it's zone agricultural now, but we know how that works on this board. Zone agricultural is only temporary holding until they're ready to.
I believe there's a PD right behind it on Pine Grove Road that they're gonna need access, so we might be able to talk with them and have them help offset some of the costs of decel lanes or roads to that.
We're in those conversations, so there was already conversation about sharing the red light, any type of road improvements, because the county wants to connect all the way across from Nova to Pine Grove. So we were already in discussions with the developers that were looking at the adjacent properties. So I will make the assumption those conversations would just go back to resume. And I did speak to the Newman family representative yesterday. So should we purchase the whole site and then want to sell back out a portion, they have assured me that they will not put any types of covenants and restrictions on the property that would prohibit what the future use could be. So there would be no restrictions for us to sell any balance of the property should we decide only to retain the transportation portion.
Has that property been annexed to the city of St. Cloud now?
Yes, it has been. So it's.
So yeah, so if it develops, we may even wanna do like a second St. Cloud Civic Center or something like that, have some kind of joint use facility where they have a pool or something. So I mean, I think it's like a good idea to bank it, and then in the future, you can decide what to do with it. And you're right, and it's right down Nova Road, it's right between Narcoossee. Look at all the developments along Narcoossee that occurred straight down from, you know, all the way down to 192. Those were what I heard before, right, Rhonda, when you told me that the 750 units to be developed, to get dedicated for land, some of those developers got kind of cute. And so they overdeveloped, and we don't have extra space for land out there. I mean, Jack Brack Road is gonna get, you know, behind the back end is gonna be fully developed. So we're running out of space that we can actually build something. So I think it's a very, I'm glad you brought it back up, Robert, and I'll be willing to support that motion.
Mr. Clinch, can we park our future flying buses on that property?
We could with some temporary stabilization of of the ground
So,
and some
how would I
portables
put
for
that?
lounges and such. That is entirely possible.
I think.
How would I properly put that
I
in?
think all you need is a consensus of the board, you don't need it, but that just says move on it and bring it back.
But wasn't it to be voted on last time? Should we bring it back?
You're not, I didn't think we were ready to buy it.
So you've actually terminated the original
Agreement, so we need to,
Bring
we
back
need
the
your
agreement.
direction to move forward to try and close acquisition of property and bring it back to you.
That's what I would
Now,
like to move forward with, yes, sir.
But the Newmans have indicated that they would like a rapid close.
Yeah.
They would anticipate that we would bring back the letter of intent on January the 12th and be ready to close a month later, and there is a deposit that's an expectation that may or may not be refundable. What we will do is if we, and I'm not sure, Frank, that we wouldn't rather, I mean, I don't wanna question your authority, but go ahead and have some kind of formal board action, because I just, Newmans have been very, very
yes,
patient
but
with us.
if
We need to make sure that we have serious intent, and then we can direct staff to move quickly on all the steps that need to be taken between now and January to get this done fairly.
Hearing Dr. Pace, I'm fine if you make a motion giving us that direction to proceed forward to get this, bring it back to the board for acquisition and appropriate.
Then I would move forward with the expeditious acquisition.
And I can tell you, at our Thursday real estate meeting,
I'm sorry.
we'll know if anybody's got an issue that's gonna delay anything, and I don't think there's an issue that should delay this, given where we're at.
I will second Mr. Bass's motion.
And I just have a question. Is your intent that we would pick up the last contract terms, basically?
Yes, that's the easiest thing, Mr.
The,
Thacker.
I believe from what I was told, because I did speak with them, we've actually had an appraisal and three of the appraisals were actually higher than what they're offering it to us. So we're buying it technically below appraised value of 3, is that, am I?
So, they have agreed that regardless of what the appraisals came in for, they would always hold to their 10 million. And the appraisals all came in supporting over that price, so they are willing to honor the 10 million price to date. What we're kind of looking for is, authorization to move forward with the geotech report, which is roughly $23,000. We're looking for, direction to let Johnston Survey go ahead and complete the survey. And then we would bring back the actual agreement modified with just the balance of what was not completed in the previous contract, and bring back to the board on January 12th to make it an official agreement again. That would then encourage and show the closing date in February.
That's all subsumed in your motion.
That's what I was gonna say, that should be all included.
Yes.
Right. Yes, sir.
And then whether or not we fight with the county on where to put the parking lot would be a second issue that I'd be more than happy to take on.
Okay.
Okay, so I heard a motion from Mr. Bass to approve the previous contract et al. Do we have a second?
No, it's actually,
It would be a new.
it's not that. It's a
Wait.
motion to direct us to move forward expeditiously, to bring back to the board a final contract for approval, the acquisition of the property, and to do whatever due diligence.
Perfect.
You said it prettier than I
Do
did,
we
but
have,
who
do we have a
support that one?
second, please?
Ms. Castillo,
I
you
second.
seconded it.
You
Okay,
said
just making sure okay, so I have a motion from Bass, second from Ms. Castillo. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
We have, motion passes 4-0 with 4 with 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Okay.
Chairman Thacker, I also brought up the idea that I need to seek some guidance from the board on Pine Tree Road, and I think that's probably under new business. Is that okay with you? Many of you may know that we have a piece of 19.87 acres off of Pine Tree Road in St. Cloud. It's right behind the Covington development. It's about 15 acres south of Pine Tree Road, 4.7 acres north of Pine Tree Road. We purchased the property in 2006 for $1.9 million. It appraised in 2017 for $1.2 million. Our transportation team had decided that it was not the best location for a new transportation site. That was the original intent. So the low bids were rejected in 2008. The school board directed staff to hire a real estate broker who we have here with us in the room. It currently has a medium-density residential land use designation and MH2 zoning. So it's suitable to expand the use of the manufactured mobile home park that's there at Covington or for other residential purposes. For up to 10 units per acre, current zoning allows for 50-foot lots. The City of St. Cloud would support rezoning for townhomes on the property. And we basically have two options, because for a transportation facility, we know that the Newman Road property, now that you've decided to move forward with that, is far more advantageous. It's in a better location and a better size and shape. So Surrey Homes LLC has approached us and proposing to expand, I think, Covington, or do you know, 54 to 60 single-family dwelling units on 45 to 50-foot lots on the south side of Pine Tree Road. They have done a 90-day letter of intent, Rhonda? Help me, I'm sorry. They would want a 90-day letter of intent in order to do due diligence with the City of St. Cloud. If the feedback from the City of St. Cloud is positive, then they would enter into a purchase and sale agreement. The recommended price from Bishop, Beal, and Duncan would be $1.6 million for this portion of the land that they want. And what Bishop, Beal, and Duncan sees is that we could potentially list the remaining 4 acres as 4 1-acre commercial lots. That is in a place where St. Cloud is looking to add some medical office space for $250,000 each. At the same time, the City of St. Cloud has also approached us and offering to potentially buy the property for a public works facility. They would purchase the entire acreage. They've not made an offer. They just have said, give us a price. And they would at the same time request agreement to use our fuel pumps at the Michigan Avenue facility during transition and or emergencies as they ramped up their public works facility. So I really need to know, do we want to sell this to a developer, keep part of it and potentially sell that at a higher price? Or do we want to work with the City of St. Cloud for a price that's fair and reasonable based on appraised value?
I say let the city have it.
Yeah, I'm preferred as a courtesy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because we're dealing again with unknowns. Like that, when they say commercial, I mean, Stevens Plantation is, they've tried to sell commercial and it's just, and it's not really been as robust as and I just worry about, would we be able to sell those as for commercial sites? I don't know, it's the unknown. I'd rather have one buyer for all of it than have to piece it all out. It'd be easier.
Yeah.
If we could get a price that was suitable for it.
I have a rule of thumb as a professional courtesy. Here I am saying, man, I want the county to work with us on their plans. St. Cloud wants it, it's taxpayer money. And if somebody's gonna benefit, I'd rather the taxpayer benefit. Because at the end of the day, the City of St. Cloud residents pay school board taxes too. So they're basically both of our bosses. So I'd rather give the money to our boss than give the money to some private developer. Increase congestion, increase traffic, and cause other nightmares. And we can solve a problem for the city. Because later on in the future, like we're developing the side of Newman in the City of St. Cloud's property. And so St. Cloud might be nice to us too. So I like to play nice in the sandbox and work together with other government entities every time of the day.
Do you know how much we paid for that?
1.9 million in 2006.
6 was a different time.
And that was before the market crash.
It was at the peak.
Is there a time limit to making this decision? I just feel like there's a lot.
I just wanted direction and then we would bring back an agreement for the board to decide one way or the other. I just didn't know which direction you wanted us to go first in terms of negotiations.
If you wanna go with the private route, I haven't looked at it in a little bit, but I think we're gonna have to look at doing another bid. You just can't dispose of private, public property to real estate and giving it to X. I think I legally believe you can work it in a local with the city, but I'm where you're at if the money is right. But I will tell you that my initial instincts, and I'll look at it again tomorrow, is you can't do a deal with Surrey without bidding it out.
All the more reason to just say, hey, just work a deal with St. Cloud. I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
St. Cloud
I've
interested
heard
in
from
buying
two.
it or just wants us to convey it?
No, they're interested in buying it.
Okay.
And they just bring us an offer?
It does,
I mean,
it does take it off the tax roll.
Is that different
$1
from
billion.
we're about to do this.
How would Pine Tree with Surrey be different than Lakeview with Surrey?
If you remember, they
Higher.
took bids on Pine Tree.
Well, no, we had several offers.
We had several
Right.
offers.
Which
So
we
we
have
went
several
through a
offers
purchasing
on Pine
process.
Tree too.
We don't have several
Yes, we
offers
do.
on
We
this
do.
property.
We have several.
This is
And
the
they are
first
the
I'm being
best
told
offers.
this.
I can't hear you, Frank.
We
Bill,
had a
tell 'em
million,
what I said.
MI offered $1 million and I can't remember who the other.
I'm saying,
bidder was.
let us look at it legally, all right? And what I'm hearing is, yes, you wanna sell the property. And then we'll come back with.
Cause how many
the
total
different-
acres is it, like 19 or something?
19.87.
Yeah, we can't even build a school on it, you know?
Well, it's 19.87, but Nolte Road runs through the middle, so there's 4 acres on the north and the balance
Oh,
is
so
on
it's
the
even
south.
split.
Pine
So
Tree.
it's even too
Right.
small right now for our elementary.
Yeah, so we couldn't do anything else with it, we just holding it, wishing something happens, and again, my
We can
preference
look
is
at
I'd
the
rather
right
be a
guy.
professional courtesy, we work with the other government agencies.
If I could ask a question, Jill, does Surrey want time to be able to do this like they did the other thing, or
Yeah,
are they
to be
willing to
commensurate with
close
the
immediately?
Lakeview contract, he was asking for a 90-day due diligence just to make sure that the demand was there
Right,
for that lot product. We tried to sell the property geared towards senior housing to address your issue, Commissioner Melendez, about congestion and even school impacts and those things. But the property's just too small, it just doesn't make sense.
are they willing to close and pay us within 90?
No.
That's why I'm saying, I remember what it
it'll
was
be
with
a-
them last time, like 2 years.
They want permits, yeah, it'll
Well,
be-
so that's a major consideration vis-a-vis if St. Cloud, we reach an agreement with, you got the loss of money and you got the gaining of money. So I think we need to flush that out and come back to you on this.
Happy to bring back something then, I just need a direction for which way you wanted
And
us
if
to
St.
consider
Cloud's
going.
willing to be interested, I'd like to have some representative from St. Cloud and tell us, hey, how beautiful the public works is and how much they need it, and have them tell us, how great it is.
We'll get our partners to follow up, thank you.
Okay, any other new business?
Impact fee workshop date,
Just leave it like it is.
okay.
Brings us to my favorite part of the meeting. We have a new student representative for this meeting and then 2 more meetings. Oscar Newman from Celebration High School. And I don't know if they gave you the lay of the land here, Oscar, but what we normally do is at the end of the meeting, if you want to ask us anything, tell us anything, give us any insights on what you saw or didn't see, you have the floor for a few minutes if you'd like.
Do I go up there or do I stay here?
Well,
I just wanted to first off thank you all for inviting me here. I didn't see anybody from Celebration High School, but thank them for nominating me for this. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and see how this works. And I know this is not ideal times for all of us as students, as administrators and board members, but I really do appreciate the leadership that we need is provided here to lead us through the times that we are currently going through. And I can't pretend to know a lot about development or economic reasons, but I do
You're a
appreciate.
good combination.
Yeah.
That Goodwin property's not yours?
I wish.
What a shame.
100 acres sounds nice. But I do appreciate the efforts that you, the board members, and other people here researching these and coming up with the best. I'm also 18. I'm a voter as well, so I do appreciate best economics for all of us and the helping other people out. And also, having seen this meeting, I do appreciate the open and honest discussions that happen between board members this meeting, as well as between guest members in this meeting. So just wanted to thank you again for inviting me, and I appreciate the opportunity to come here.
Glad to have you.
Thank you, very good. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
With that, we will recess and we will move upstairs for the executive session. And we will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Are you student council president or?
Yeah, I'm the class president.